Hello, everyone. Welcome to Old Guard, New Blood, episode 25. And we're talking about Google Search Console for SEOs today. And my name is Dixon Jones. And I've got another fantastic group of people in with me, Sante, Olga, and Natalie. Thanks very much for coming in, guys. Thanks for talking to us, talking with us today. It's a good time to talk about Google Search Console because Google have just come out with a new API command. We'll get onto that. But why don't we just start by getting you guys to introduce yourself. Olga, why don't you start? Tell us about you and where do you come from?
So my name is Olga. I am from Poland. Currently, I am the director of SEO at Market JD, a Chicago-based company that does SEO for lawyers. So I've been in SEO for almost 10 years. So that's my thing, and I am an SEO geek.
We're all SEO geeks here.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming in, and thanks for coming back again as well.
It's a pleasure.
Natalie, tell everyone about you and yourself and where you come from.
I am a freelance SEO consultant. I've been in the industry for 13 years. I sort of cover the whole spectrum of SEO, technical content and links. I specialize quite a bit in migrations and the tech side of things these days. So I'm very much in Search Console pretty much every day.
Brilliant.
Yeah, this is my bread and butter. This is what I do.
And thanks for coming back thanks for coming back in again as well. I mean, I think everyone has been on webinars with me in the past here, especially Sante, who is also a Majestic ambassador. So obviously, Sante, you know, we've known each other for a long time, and you can tell by our faces that we're very old. But Sante, tell us about you, where you come from.
Yes, good evening, everybody. My name is Sante. I'm a search marketing consultant. Core business is SEO. Should I say how long I've been in the industry, Dixon?
Yeah, it's on your website, mate. It's on your LinkedIn profile. 27 years it is at the moment.
27 years and counting. We've done a considerable number of things over the years, evolving with the industry. And of course, Search Console is let's say the tool that I normally use. I'm an order of magnitude kind of person, and I find that Search Console, when it comes to the information, that the basic information that you need to know if you're pointing in the right direction or not, is the place to go.
Brilliant. So guys, thank you all for coming in. It's great. Just before we dive into the subject matter today, I'd like to bring in my producer, David. David, is there anything I've missed we need to cover before I carry on?
I'd just like to highlight that, you know, we're going to have a wonderful episode today. We're going to have a wonderful episode next month and every month, of course, when this show's on. Just want to touch upon the fact that next month's episode will be about internal linking. That's going to be on the 2nd of March. I'll tell you more about that towards the end of this episode. But if you want to sign up to make sure that you don't miss that one live, just go to majestic.com/webinars.
Excellent. And obviously Majestic sponsor the whole of the event, so thanks for them for putting things on. Certainly if you use Majestic, you may not know that you can integrate your Google Search Console into Majestic tools, so look that up. It's not that obvious to find, and it's kind of useful because it starts tracking things over time and means that you don't have to jump into Google Search Console for too many tools. But let's dive in. Thanks for a couple of people that are already on live, and GJ, I think, said hi to you, Sante.
Yes.
And so thanks for anybody if you do want to ask questions. Oh, and William's there as well, William Jones. So if you've got some questions in there, do ask them live. If you want to go in live next time, guys, if you're on the podcast, sign up and we'll just ping it when it goes live so that you don't have to, you'll know if you follow any of us or follow me. Okay, so before we dive into the API, I would love to find out what the one thing in Google Search Console is that you each love. Pick out something that you think is either particularly useful or something you can't live without. Natalie, why don't I start with you? You know, what thing in Google Search Console is your go-to section, if you like?
I say the thing that is the most fascinating and varied for me is the excluded part of the coverage report, looking at all of the different ways that your content is understood, ignored by Google, filtered in a different way. It's usually the place where you find out all kinds of things about what's preventing your site from, if there's a problem with the site being crawled and indexed, it's usually the first place I'll go to see if there's something, absolutely glaring in there. That's
cool.
Everything else is very useful.
I'll
Performance
come back into that, I think,
all the time, but the excluded is the bit that I like the most.
All right, I was going to find out what's in there in a little bit. Olga, what about you? What's your your go-to place?
So since I do a ton of technical SEO audits, that would be the technical SEO section. For me, that would be coverage report as well. I love using that to check what pages are indexed by Google. And the same, I think equally important is the page experience report and core web vitals, because the core web vitals there, this is like the field data. So usually it's enough to just see what's there, and you don't need to worry about what's in Google PageSpeed Insights too much. You don't have to obsess about it, because sometimes it's enough to just go there and see the real picture.
Okay, so you're happy enough using the page, the core web vitals in Google Search Console, and it means you don't have to sort of use Google Lighthouse or Lighthouse in Chrome.
I can, but I can kind of treat it. I don't have to worry too much if everything is not green there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Sante, what's your bit?
My first stop is on the search results tab of the Search Console. I like to the first thing that I start feeding off of in terms of information is the data that's coming out of there. I can manage barely to do some scripting in Python, so I pull down a script. With a script, I can pull down the top 1,000 search terms. And off of that, I create a pivot table that I do a lot of detailed results, and we can go down that, talk about that a little bit more in detail if are interested in that.
So, and Craig jumps in with keywords, baby, in the chat, and I have to say, okay, you're old school then, Sante, right there, because I must admit I dive into the performance section as well, because I don't really use rank checking tools very much. Even the big ones, I kind of happily just dive in there and get them to feel my way. But that's probably because I'm not technical enough to do what Olga does and what Natalie does, to be honest with you. So I just go and look at the results of other people's work sometimes. So, but yeah, no, I mean, obviously the keyword stuff is where us as SEOs kind of want to see these impressions and these clicks going up and up, and it's kind of the end game really. And some of the other tools I think are part of the, what do we have to do to change to push it to push those results up. So let's just go into, because it's interesting though that none of you talked about the URL inspection tool, which is kind of the very first tab if you go into Google Search Console for those listening. And there's a URL inspection tool, which by default you can sort of have a look at any one of the tools, any one of your URLs, and it'll give you some basic information about whether it's indexed in the index, and whether it's mobile friendly and those kind of things. And the big news from Google was that tool is now available as an API, which means that other tools can jump into it. I mean, I always thought that Google Search Console was all available in other tools, so I didn't really realize that this is a new thing, but it obviously is. I mean, is it going to be useful for SEO? Is it going to be useful for us in the industry? What kind of things might we use an API for the URL inspection tool for? I don't know if anyone wants to jump in.
I think if we could, I think it was conceived as an additional piece of information that can be used to combine with all the other data that is available. I look at it more as a kind of like in the perspective of a data frame, where you have a lot of features that are available in terms of data. So I tend to, as I mentioned, start from the search results and the search terms and the URL, etc. And you can add to that on the same, if you want to look at it as a data frame or as an Excel sheet, you can actually add all of these different pieces of information, all of these features, and put them in line and start looking at the bigger picture. So having an API to access that and actually delivered to your doorstep, so to speak, on a computer, can facilitate, the integration of all of this information. And I think, I might be wrong, but this sort of like falls in line with the overall strategy of Google being more and more powerful on the AI side of things, and the machine learning tends to surface here in the Search Console for those who want to take advantage of it.
Olga, is it something you've looked at? Is something you'd like to use?
So I would personally use it to kind of have the bulk list of all the URLs and the canonical that Google selected for those URLs versus the canonical that I declared. So this would be kind of a very useful thing for me, especially when doing an audit, a visibility audit or a technical SEO audit. So I would love to like have this all in a spreadsheet and be able to draw conclusions.
So so if you find differences between the canonical you declare and the canonical that Google thinks is appropriate, do you always think that the one that you declared is right, or is it sometimes Google has a better idea even though and you change your own declaration, or is it always Google's wrong, or is it always Google's right?
I think in some cases Google may get it better than we do. For example, Google may look at some external signals like links right to that URL, and in some cases it is good to like have that data and be able to kind of analyze it and decide, oh, maybe in that case Google was right, or if Google wasn't right, then I may try to improve the page, which I think is actually the canonical page. I may kind of try to change the internal linking on my website so that Google kind of gets my intention better. So that's how I would. It's good to like see Google's perspective in bulk and be able to kind of compare it with your idea of what's canonical for your site.
Interesting. And Natalie, I don't know if there's anything you want to add on there, but I was going to ask about the limits. But
yeah, well, I can talk about that, but I would just like to add to what Olga was saying, that in your question about is Google usually wrong, if the thing has been set up correctly, and so the canonical setup is correct from the SEO's point of view, and Google comes back with a completely different canonical, yes, Google is wrong, but it will be down to some other signals that you're serving it. So it's that's the distinction. So it's great to see that disparity, and it'll be great to see it in bulk, because at the moment we just sort of spot check, and you do sort of get the gist of how Google is misunderstanding your intent, but it's far better to see it in bulk. So I mean, on the limit side, 2,000 pages on an e-commerce site or a travel website isn't a great deal of, in the scheme of things, but you can persevere with that, and they'll be able to sort of grab the data over a period of time. It's certainly better than what we have at the moment. I haven't done any kind of bulk.
I mean, I guess though, 2,000 is 2,000 a day per site should be enough to find the patterns, I would guess, because usually if you've got a problem, it's across a whole folder or a whole, subdomain or a whole section or something like that, I would guess.
Yeah, I'd persevere with that limit. It's certainly better than what we have. Yeah, for sure. The other thing I was going to say, I think this is Google gaining control over index checking, because, and I haven't done this for a while, but there are other tools that will allow you to do this index checking in bulk, but it involves proxies and just huge amounts of sort of gaming the system that now hopefully this API will, eradicate and make it easier for Google and not overloading.
I think that's a really good point as to why Google are starting to really push these APIs now, because Google has for years tried to stop, got really angry at the scrapers, because the scrapers cause a lot of challenges for Google bandwidth wise. So it makes sense for them to be a little bit more open with the data that they can give away, at least before they start really hammering the scrapers and complaining about the scrapers, which I suspect they will at some point in the future. Craig came in with a question, or came in with a point just there. He said, I was thinking that you could use the API to automatically, the URL API to automatically track crawls and indexing after site changes to try and reduce signal and noise. I don't think you can at the moment. I think that I read the document. I just read the documentation before I came on. So, but it doesn't allow you to do it on a live URL. So you've got to go into Google Search Console to check in live in real time. But the API will only tell you what's indexed in Google Search Console. So it'll look up the Search Console data, not a live URL. So you can't just change on the fly and then use the tool yet. However, there is a bunch of things, and it'll tell you when it last crawled, so at least when you've checked it from, and maybe if we've got time at the end, I'll go and read out the output elements from the API just for anybody that's interested for that. But let's leave the API for now. We can jump back in if you want to, but let's go back to some of the other tools that you mentioned. And Olga, you talked about the page experience and the Core Web Vitals tools as things that you like quite a bit. How do you use those in your technical audits? Are they fundamental to your whole approach? How do they make you a better SEO?
So I always check the site with Google Speed Insights and Google Lighthouse, and because these tools can give us more or less they give us useful tips on how to improve certain things to make our site perform better. But these are lab tools, so usually what they show us is in reality is better than what we see in those tools. So if I analyze the site, the first thing I do, I check in those tools, and if I have access to GSC, then I check what's in GSC, because if in GSC, for example, all the pages have good page experience, and Core Web Vitals for mobile and now for desktop are all green, then I don't think I have to spend a lot of time trying to improve, working on improvements that for example Google Page Speed Insights is showing us, because in some cases it is quite difficult to get them implemented, especially if this is a huge site, a very complex site. And if the site is already passing them and is green, then I don't have to obsess about it. I may say maybe you can work on making those images smaller and changing or lazy loading images, but other than that, you don't have to obsess because you are green there. And Google, when assessing sites, it only takes into account field data. So even with that, I can focus on other things if that's okay.
I think that's a good point, because a lot of audits of the past of the old school, if you like, used to just bring out problem after problem after problem after problem, and you can find yourself with 100-page audit of problems and no real priority for what to fix. So, you know, being able to say what you don't have to fix is probably a pretty good approach. So I think that's useful. You guys, Sante and Natalie, do you guys use the page experience and the core Web Vitals stuff much?
Yeah, it's very useful in terms of grouping pages of the same type together. So it's probably the first place to look when analyzing core Web Vitals. Say you have pages that are poor or needs improvement, it groups them together. It tells you which are similar pages, which saves you going to look at the pages and figuring out if it's the same template or not. So that's sort of a time saver. And I echo what you're saying about the traffic light system in Search Console, that wasn't always there. You know, that in Webmaster Tools, you did have to figure out what information was useful and what you could ignore. Now everything's very clear, red, amber, and green. I actually didn't realize that until but yeah, of course, it makes it very much more accessible to, you know, other digital marketers who perhaps aren't as close to SEO. It can sort of help steer them in the right direction. I guess it's all part of Search, you know, it's rebranded to Search Console from Webmaster Tools. The whole idea was to make it more accessible and less, you know, intimidating. Oh, you're on mute, Dixon.
Dixon is on mute.
Sorry, the dog started whinging to try and get out of the room, so I had to do some little stuff. I apologize for that. Yeah, you now that everyone mentions it, the red, yellow, green all over the reports is very helpful actually, and it's just subtle but obvious when you see it. So Sante, you were talking about the search queries, and they can be very, very useful to be able to see, you know, see the ranking data and the impression data and stuff, and hopefully seeing it going up. It can make you feel good until it makes you feel bad, and you've just had an algorithm change and it all goes wrong.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly.
So you dive in with that every day. You know, what are you using those keywords for?
So there are actually two fundamental ways of looking at that data when you group it properly. So if you take the bulk of it with 1,000 queries, you can associate to each URL the search terms that Google has identified or at least wants to share with us. And you have your typical, well, the way I have it set up, I do clicks, impressions, click-through rate, average position, and then query or landing pages. So typically, anybody doing SEO will have an editorial guideline and a list of pages or articles and search terms, topics around which each article is actually based. And so the first thing that you can do is actually match up and compare the search terms that Google has proposed the page against the ones that you have actually used, and see how well they compare. So you can actually see how well your SEO has been digested, so to speak, by Google. A second thing that you can actually do is reverse that table, and for each query, you can associate the URLs and see if and how much or to which extent there is any ongoing cannibalization between search terms, so that you can actually sort things out and make sure that there is the right balance, and that you don't have several pages competing on the same search term.
That's something that for me, I've got a specific issue that I'm dealing with now. We're trying to be honest with you, we're trying to change the ranking from one page to another. And in the pages tab, it's really obvious. So in the queries, and then you click on pages, it's really obvious for this term that we've got, it's Google's Google's trying to work it out. It's, you know, the impressions are 50% of this and 50% of that, a couple of others for a few, but it's really obvious that I've got some cannibalization issues going on. Google's not clear about the search term, and I need to do some work on my end to help Google decide which one is the right page. So I would agree. I think it's an excellent tool for helping identify cannibalization issues, and also it's also good. You know, that report is good for discovering keywords that you didn't really necessarily know that you were already sort of doing some work for, and you can exploit some of those and say, right, okay, I didn't know about this key phrase for my industry or for this client, but now I know it. I can develop content and make it stronger. Make it stronger as well. So
I think an interesting thing to add to that is content curation, actually. So with this data from Search Console, you can actually identify those, based just what you said, understanding what's happening. So there may be some search terms that are surfacing that are not ranking very well, but they could be an opportunity perhaps to update the page or increase the size of the article and the reach and the depth, etc. So that's another thing to keep in mind to avoid content rot, let's say. Just creating content and more content that just gets buried and lost over the years. Yeah.
Okay. Very useful. And Natalie, the coverage report. So that's not something I use very much, and I'm sure I should. So, tell us how I can get some value out of the coverage report.
Well, totally depends on
what is it exactly again. Okay. It's not a part I use, so no.
So it tells you about the status. In summary, it tells you about the status of all of. It has data on all of the pages on your website. You can only within the interface interact with, unfortunately, like 1,000 rows of the data. And that would be a great thing if they could start to open that up a bit more widely to SEOs. I think that'd be super useful. But it's still, as you've been saying, the sample size it gives you enough to go on. And it will tell you things like, the one that always fascinates me is, so again, in the traffic lights, you've got a section for valid pages. And then, what you want there is submitted and indexed. You want that to be the highest number possible. You don't really want other statuses to be there. What fascinates me is there's often so many pages in a status called indexed, not in sitemap. That's usually one of the things that, however useful XML sitemaps are in the scheme of things, sometimes they're extremely useful, sometimes it's just a box ticking exercise. But often that opens up things. But, if that number is extremely high and it's pages you've never really heard of, then you've got a problem. And then the same goes for the excluded tab. Often there's data in there. Often it's evidence of Google actually doing its job. So identifying that it's a 404, a not found page, or a page with a redirect. But it can also alert you to there being problems with the indexing of your content if you've got high numbers of discovered not crawled, or crawled not indexed, or discovered not indexed. I can't remember. There's sort of the steps that Googlebot follows before it actually indexes. And if you've got a lot of pages stuck in those categories, again, it's indicative of a problem. And it's, it just sort of helps you investigate the right areas. If you've got a performance issue, it directs your inquiry quite well.
Okay. I'm going to just jump in there. We've got a question from Craig again. Question: Are any of you using Google Search Data as part of your sales prospecting? If so, how? I don't know. Am I? Well, I would say I'm only using that if I find a new keyword that leads me to a market avenue that I didn't realize was my market, which I probably shouldn't have done because I'm supposed to be the marketing guy and should know that. So I don't really use it for sales prospecting. I do use Google Analytics because then I can see where my referrals are coming from for that. Because if I've got an article that's come out from somewhere and it's talking about our product or whatever, then it can be very useful to work with the people that gave us the citation. I think. I don't know if anybody else has got any insights as to using it directly for developing sales leads.
The only
Nope.
thing I can think of, not at present, I don't have my own website, to my shame, but if managing the Search Console for your agency, kind of similar to what you were saying, Dixon, about working out where your referrals come from in analytics, there may be specific case studies. If it was a well-stocked agency website with specific case study information and you saw that was gaining a lot of traction, perhaps then that could but I'm sort of thinking theoretically here. I don't do it myself.
We'll move on from that one then, unless anyone's going to put the hand up and say, "Yeah, I've got this really, rock solid idea." I think we're more at the end of, how can we use it to get more traffic, not necessarily how to do outreach on that particular one there. One thing I did notice about Search Console, I was going through all of the relatively limited number of sites that I have access to, because I'm not an agency. I haven't got 100 of them, but I've got a fair few, I suppose, and they've been around for a long time. Most of the ones I've been with, because I'm old, and I didn't really pay attention to the fact that in some websites I go in and the performance tab there's just one thing, there's just performance. Then in other ones it also has search and discover as separate items. So Google Discover, and then in other ones it's got Google News, where they've seen results in Google News. So what's interesting is that different people going into Google Search Console start to see different things. And I only just realized that until your website appears in Google News, you're never going to see a Google News tab on your Google Search Console, and same with Google Discover. So I guess if you don't have those, what can we do to get ourselves into Google News and getting it onto Google Discover? Anyone got any thoughts or ideas on how you get into those tools, those areas, and get something on the screen?
So I can give you an example from my own site. So I started my own site like a year and a half ago, and I was publishing very regularly. And basically within 2 or 3 months, I started to appear in Google News like a ton. I sometimes even got more than 1,000, 2,000 clicks per day. But last year, around November, I kind of stopped publishing so often, and starting in January, my Google Discover traffic practically died. So I think one of the things you need to do, you need to publish add a lot fresh content relatively often.
Did you register your site in Google News somewhere to start getting Google News traffic? Because I remember that used to happen, but I'm so old, that was 10 years ago. And only sites that had, ID numbers that were incremental in their URLs could get in.
I don't think that's necessary.
Okay.
Anymore.
I think, okay, I have some firsthand information. Alex, my son, he has a football site, and he follows it regularly. He's into the technicalities of the game, etc. And his site has picked up considerably over the past 18 months. So he too has been publishing regularly. I'm pretty sure that he did some kind of, he submitted the site for to be featured in the news. But like you say, Dixon, in the past, it was far more complicated, and the URLs had to have a certain structure, etc. So all that is gone now. I think what Olga touched on too is correct. I think the point is that you need fresh and accurate information. Once Google, let's say, likes the quality and believes that the quantity of your publishing is good enough, things seem to get quite simpler, let's say.
Okay, interesting. Natalie, I don't know if you've got any thoughts on Google Discover or that. I've got a little bit of stuff on Google Discover. What I've noticed is that Google Discover. So for those that don't know, Google Discover, it's if you've got an Android phone and it's kind of, they sort of appears on your phone as to what you should do to read today, I think is what it is. I'm an iPhone user, but I do see when it appears in Google Discover, it started suddenly, injects some life into my stats in Google Search Console, which is great. And what I have noticed is that because Google Search Discover is based very much around topics, there's a very close relation there seems to be a close relation between structured data and particularly, entity-based structured data, topic-based structured data, and suddenly being able to appear in Google Discover, because Google can see a good match between somebody that likes hiking and a page about hiking that they think they'll be interested in. And that is a good for Craig that talked about it before, that is a good way of doing outreach using it, because it means that you're now if you're getting Google Discovery results, then you're getting into the eyes of people that are already attuned to that particular topic, and they're going to read your content even though they didn't see the content in the search results, which is kind of a useful thing, I think. So I don't know, have you used have you noticed ways of triggering the Google Discover, Natalie? What those areas?
I'm just trying to think of the sites I work on that have news sections. It sort of popped up when it became a thing. I'm kind of echoing the thoughts of both Olga and Sante here. It's no longer as difficult to get into Google News, but freshness is very important. I have a question for I know I'm not the presenter, Dixon. But
no, go ask the question.
People's views on. You remember the age-old concept of query deserves freshness?
I do. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, and then the example that we used at the time was the Katrina, Katrina. And is it a band or is it a typhoon that not a typhoon? What do they call them in America?
Hurricane.
Big storm that hit. Yeah, big storm that hit New Orleans. Yes. Yeah.
I'd be very interested in people's opinions on whether it is still relevant in the way that it used to be, or if things have evolved with the advent of other algorithm changes, where it's sort of, the search intent seems to be much more baked into. I've just been interested in people's views, really.
Olga, Sante, any thoughts?
Yes, it's good, sticking to our core subject here, which is the Search Console. It's interesting at times to find how the algorithm can get things wrong by just identifying a few terms that are ambiguous and that can be interpreted in a different way. You will see that from time to time, a page will surface for a very strange, unrelated search term, at least in the context of that website. And that this has happened to me a number of times because of typos or things where a word can be interpreted in a different way. I have seen that happen. So it is indeed very important to be very careful about how things are structured, about how content is structured, and let's say even the simplicity of your phrases and how they're structured. Although search engines tend to publicize the fact that they're highly intelligent, I tend to think of the entity search engine as a big, overgrown, very smart child. So it's smart, but it's always a child. And so it still needs guidance. It needs the direction. It needs the comfort of certainty, let's say. And you can do that by making sure that all the content that you write is simple, let's say.
I love the philosopher in Sante there. You know? I'm gonna go and say I think maybe it's not portrayed in the same way by Google. You know, the concept that I don't know if query deserves freshness is much in their documentation anymore. But I think that the idea that, you know, an idea becomes important does very much get triggered by Google. And I think that I think for Google, it's all about being able to understand when a new phenomenon, thing, whatever, becomes important. So I think for them, probably Google Trends is a very important tool in the background for them, so that they can start to watch out for spikes and things. And when a spike happens across many searches for a particular idea, it means that something has probably happened in the zeitgeist, and they need to probably have some other algorithms jumping in to give fresh content more meaning, or stuff that they can see that they discovered, you know, after the date of the spike, probably for a period of time will have much more weighting. Is my opinion. How it plays out, I'm not an expert. Well, okay, supposedly I am supposed to be an expert, but Google haven't told me per se, shall we say. Okay, guys, there was one other thing, you know, that idea of Google Search Console getting busier as it gets used more. I also saw in the enhancements reports as well. I was comparing the different systems, and the enhancement reports, some of them just had, you know, breadcrumbs as a tab. Another one had videos and site link search box as a tab. And then I started looking and seeing another one with AMP and FAQs and stuff. So I went and looked into the documentation, and there are absolutely thousands. There's about 50 different things that can come in, all the way down to you know, fact check schema and stuff, and it all seems to relate back to schema, different types of schema. So you know, how much are you guys using schema these days compared to a couple of years ago? I guess is my last question. Or what kind of schema do you guys enjoy using? Anyone want to jump in, Olga?
Okay.
Sante, go ahead.
You're not Olga. Yeah. Okay. So
No.
go
on. I've done a lot of, as you know, I mean, I've done a considerable amount of schema, venturing off the beaten path.
You and I spent a lot of time on schema on Majestic stuff.
Yes, exactly. So let's say that I've had very good results with the use of schema. I think there is an unidentified boundary that Google conceals quite, you know, that goes to a great extent to conceal how much of that data they actually use to evaluate a page and the topics on the page compared to the amount of effort that they put into actually using that data to feature that page with a rich snippet, and how closely is the structured data valued when it is compared to the content that is on the page.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
These are burning kind of topics, you know, because if your content is not if it's not laser focused on not very much in tune, let's say, with your schema, you know, how well is that schema? How well is the work that you're doing on the effort that you're putting into that schema? How is that going to pay you back? That's an interesting piece of research that honestly have not done, but would probably be interesting to know.
Yeah. It's very. What I think Majestic should do is a competition, maybe, and maybe that's my next pitch to Majestic, or do a competition of how many different types of schema can you get in the in Google Search Console, divided by the number of pages you've got number of pages you've got in the Google Search Console, divided by the number of different featured snippet types that it's picking up, and see how efficiently you can get all of the things triggering. Do you guys all use Bing Webmaster Tools? There's a lot of stuff in there, and if you do, what do you like? And that's GJ Bramer's question, and we'll lead out with that question. I think are you guys using the Bing Webmaster Tools? Olga?
I am using it.
Not you, Sante. You talk too much. I know. Olga?
I do. Although I don't use it like all the time. It has a bunch of kind of interesting tools there. One of them, it kind of can scan your site, if I remember correctly, and kind of show you some insights, technical SEO insights. So I use it, but I know I should and could use it more, because this is a very nice resource. But I always kind of don't have enough time to go there, because there is a lot going on in Google Search Console and on the Google side.
Natalie, do you use Bing Webmaster Tools enough?
Not as much as
No.
I should. It's one of those that I get reminded that it exists every 6 months and go, oh yeah. But like probably more frequently if I'm running Bing ads, I recall that there is Bing Webmaster Tools, and as Olga says, that there are some great reports in it. It's just unfortunately it's a very Google centric world, isn't it?
I like Microsoft Clarity, I think they call it, which is I'm sure is somewhere in the Bing stuff, where it's kind of effectively showing you heat maps, which is Google doesn't do anything like that in Google Search Console, and it's nice to have see heat maps of where people are clicking or not clicking, and paths through the site and stuff. So I think that there's a lot going on Google Webmaster Tools, on Bing Webmaster Tools. So Sante, I'll let you come in. I apologize for cutting you off there. It's a good thing we've known each other for 25 years.
Yeah, it's really just a matter, as everybody mentioned, it's a matter of time, actually. So data is a deadly addiction. You can just spend hours analyzing and asking yourself questions and trying to find answers, and answers just ask for more questions at times. And so it's at the end of the day, you tend to stick to, unfortunately, I must say, you go with the flow, and everybody is, as Natalie said, we're Google centric, at least for now, and we tend to forget. The other aspect is that at least I do considerable amount of work on Italian websites, and the amount of traffic that goes via Bing, coming into sites via Bing is extremely low. So
yeah, but if the analytical data is still telling you how to make your site better, it's still quite a good thing. I'm sure Dwayne Forrester will be very unhappy to, and Fabrice Canel will be very unhappy to hear that we are not giving Bing Webmaster Tools as much of a look in as perhaps we should. But we're guilty. We're guilty of time constraints, I guess. That's the thing. So another fantastic show, guys. Thank you very much. I'll just quickly, before we go, for anybody that was interested, the output from the URL API, I think things like the time that it was last looked up and put in there, whether it's mobile friendly, whether it's indexed properly, and all the things that essentially are in the URL inspection tool on Google Search Console, but you can't yet do it live. So it's basically looking at what's already indexed. So just before I go, David, before I sort of ask everyone how everyone can get hold of, well, let's do that first then. Guys, how can people get hold of you if they want to know more, if they want to engage your services? Where do they go, Natalie?
Mostly you'll find me on LinkedIn and Twitter. Just search my name on LinkedIn. I think I'm the only one of the only Natalie Mott who exists.
So those on podcasts, guys, that's Natalie with an IE and then Mott, MOTT. So,
yeah, literally Google me.
Google Natalie Mott. Yeah, should do the trick. That's the answer you want to give as an SEO consultant, isn't it? And the problem is we can't do that with Olga because we can't spell her surname. So,
Unfortunately.
Olga, how are we going to find you?
Again, Twitter and LinkedIn. I also invite you to visit my website, SEOSLY.com. So I hope you will manage to spell my name, to type my name and find me.
Olga is OLGA, and then we go ZARZECZNA. I can't even pronounce it.
Zarzeczna.
Zarzeczna.
Oh.
No,
Almost perfect.
Okay. Sante, how do they find you?
Same. LinkedIn and Twitter are the easiest way. You can Bing me as well instead of Google. Probably should work the same.
Good one in there. Good one in there. Saving face.
And yeah.
Good.
Be more than happy to answer any questions.
Thanks very much. And David, why don't you come back in here and tell us about what's happening on next week's episode and help us out here.
I mentioned briefly at the beginning of the episode that next month's subject will be internal linking. That's going to be episode 26. It's going to be on the 2nd of March at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 5 p.m. GMT. On that one, we're going to have Orit Mutznik. Now, Orit's just started as SEO director at Forbes, so congratulations on the new role there. Looking forward to have Orit on there with Andy Drinkwater, andydrinkwater.com, and Mag Sikora from Intrepid Digital. Sign up at majestic.com/webinars to make sure you don't miss that one.
Excellent. So, guys, it just leaves me to say thank you ever so much for coming in to my panelists, Sante, Olga, and Natalie, and to the audience out there as well in podcast land. See you next time for another edition of Old Guard, New Blood. Bye, guys.
Thank you.
And thank you very much.